In the present, caste considerations inevitably played a role in the mass mobilization of the nationalist movement, that is the struggle for independence. Efforts were made to organize the depressed classes and particularly the untouchable castes. This initiative was taken by both the castes, upper caste progressive reformers as well as the members of the lower caste. Some of such progressive reformers were. So, during the nationalist movements that were taking place in the country, at that time, both the upper as well as the lower caste people were taking initiative to bring some reforms in the existing social system in the country. Some of these reformers were Jyoti Govindarao Phule. He was a social reformer who had formed Satyashodhak Samaj, Truth Seekers Society, to secure human rights and social justice for low caste people. He worked for the low caste people for the social justice. He criticized the injustice of the caste system and its severe rule of purity and pollution. He was against the rule of purity and pollution in the caste system. Then the second one was Savitri Bai Phule. She was the first woman in Pune who opened the first school for girls in Pune and devoted her life to educating Shudras and anti-Shudras. She served plague patients in Pune. So Savitri Bai Phule was the first woman who opened the first school for girls in Pune, and she was related to girls' education promotion in the country. May the girl be a Shudra girl or a non-Shudra. Then second was Pariyar E.V. Ramaswamy Yekkar. He was a nationalist leader of lower caste movement in South India. He created public awareness about equal human rights and told lower caste people to enjoy liberty and equality in the birthright of every individual, irrespective of his socio-cultural status or rank in the caste system. So, Yekkar was having the feeling that each and every people should be treated equally. There should be no discrimination on the basis of caste, and he was a nationalist leader and he promoted his ideas in the South India. Shri Narayan Guru, he was a staunch critic to the evil caste system. He criticized the caste system. He was born in Kerala and led a quiet and significant social resolution and gave the watchword one caste, one religion and one God for all people. Complete equality. Then M.N. Srinivas, he was one of the foremost sociologists and anthropologists in India who coined the term like Sanskritization and dominant caste. So these two terms, Sanskritization and dominant caste, were given by M.N. Srinivas and interpreted them in his book The Remembered Village. It provides with information on village studies in social anthropology. Ayan Kali, this Kerala-born leader of lower caste and Dalits claimed freedom for Dalits to walk on public roads and get admission of their children in government schools. And previously, there were restrictions for the Dalits to walk on public roads and to get admission of their children in government schools. So he stood against these two things. and after a long-term conflict, he could attain success in his mission. Mahatma Gandhi and B.R. Ambedkar began organizing protests against untouchability from 1920 onwards. Untouchability programs became a significant part of the Congress agenda. They were included in the Congress agenda, so that by the independence was on the horizon, there was a broad agreement across the spectrum of the nationalist movement was to treat caste as a social evil and as a colonial ploy to divide Indians. This was made the Congress agenda, the abolition of untouchability, so that as soon as independence is achieved, this matter can be strongly put forward and it could be this mission could be achieved. But the nationalist leaders, above all Mahatma Gandhi, was able to simultaneously work for the upliftment of the lower caste, advocate the abolition of untouchability and other caste restrictions, and at the same time reassure the land-owning upper caste that their interests too would be looked after. And it was Mahatma Gandhi who was engaged in the upliftment of the lower caste and advocate the abolition of untouchability. He also assured the upper caste that their interests will also be looked after. After independence, Indian state inherited and reflected these contradictions. On the other hand, the state was committed to the abolition of caste and explicitly wrote this into the constitution. Soon after achieving independence, the constitution was formed, and in the constitution the abolition of untouchability and the abolition of the caste system was also mentioned. The state admitted that if casteism is neglected, the privileges will automatically be weakened and finally. And the government was firm that if casteism is neglected, then the privileges will automatically be weakened. And finally, the institution of caste will be abolished from the Indian society. On the other hand, the state was unable and unwilling to push through radical reforms which would have undermined the economic basis of caste inequality. But the state was not able to, and or say was not willing to bring radical reforms to get rid of the caste inequalities. For example, appointment to government jobs took no account of caste, thus leaving the well-educated upper caste and the ill-educated and often illiterate lower caste to compete on equal terms. The only exception to this was in the form of reservation for the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes. In other words, we can say that in the decades immediately after independence, the state did not make sufficient efforts to deal with the fact that the upper caste and the lower caste were far from equal in economic and educational terms. So, no efforts from the side of the state were made to tackle the problem of inequality in caste system. The development activities of the state and the growth of private industry also affected caste indirectly through the speeding up and intensification of economic changes. Modern industry created all kinds of new jobs for which there were no caste rules. So, whatever development activities of the state and the growth of private industry also affected caste indirectly, because there were no such such discrimination in providing jobs to the people where certain castes were allowed and the other castes were not allowed. All the jobs were open for each and every caste. Only criteria was that ability, skills and capability should be possessed by the person who wants to seek the job. The functions traditionally performed by caste system has declined today. So now, according to the skills, abilities, capabilities of a person, the jobs are assigned to them. Urbanization and the condition of collective living in the cities made it difficult for the caste segregated pattern of social interaction to survive. And urbanization, collective living in the cities, they all became acceptable, and because of this the caste system automatically is not followed in the way it was followed previously. Modern educated Indian attracts to the liberal ideas of individualism and meritocracy began to abandon the more extreme caste practices. It was remarkable how relevant caste proved to be. Recruitment to industrial jobs continued to be organized along caste and kinship-based lines. The middlemen who recruited labor for factories tended to recruit them from their own caste. But there was some middlemen who were given the task to bring the labor to the organization, to bring the workers to the Indian industries or to the Indian offices, and they prefer to bring their own caste people in the jobs. Or shop floor were often dominated by specific castes. Prejudice against the untouchables remained quite strong and was not absent from the city, though not as extreme as in case of village. And whatever were the feelings of the masses against the untouchables, they persisted entirely. They were not got rid of, but in cities this discrimination was a bit less in comparison to that of the villages.